Hey guys, welcome to RC Video Reviews. Hey, it's a twofer today, two live streams, and I just couldn't wait to show this one to you. And I like live stream format for stuff like this because there's no real production value in it, and you know it's not meant to be entertaining. It's kind of a how-to. So I like the live streams for that because it gives us a chance to interact, and I get to show you something really cool. So what we're doing today, if you're not familiar, Crossfire is a protocol. It's a custom protocol. It's a proprietary protocol that works between a Crossfire transmitter, an external module, and a receiver. And some radios have Crossfire built in, but in the case of the TX16S, you have to add a module. So I use the Crossfire module a lot, and the reason I use it is mainly for my quads. It's not necessarily quad only, but the main reason I use it on quads is because it has really good range capabilities, and I've been using it for a long time, long enough to know that when it comes to flying Crossfire, I don't question my radio link. That's like the last thing on my mind that I'm worried about. I'm not worried about it at all. So I have a lot of faith in Crossfire, and the receivers aren't too expensive. They're about 29 bucks. So they're not cheap, but they're not abusing you, right? They're kind of in the middle. So you can get the receivers for about 29 bucks. Now, the cool part is there's recently been some hardware editions out there that allow us to use Crossfire on a plane. And if you're familiar with the protocols that are used, normally if you don't have a flight computer involved, you want to output to servos directly from your receiver, and that's called PWM, or pulse width modulation. Now, historically, Crossfire is just this little tiny receiver. This is a standard Crossfire Nano receiver. It really was meant, I think, initially to be on quads. So it's a very small form factor, and it's got this called an Immortal T antenna. And this particular antenna or system that I have runs a 915 megahertz. So very small unit, but as you can tell, there's no connections for servos. And it's because this is always meant to use a proprietary protocol called Crossfire, which talks to a flight computer. And the flight computer directs things like the servos or the motors. So if you have an intermediate layer like a flight computer in between Crossfire and your servos, if you have, say, a fixed wing running iNav, no problem running Crossfire. But it's been a problem until the adapter. And that's the cool part about what we're going to see today, because in this arrangement that I have on the desk, there is no flight computer. And as you can see, I've got ailerons. One of my flap servos is broke. So this flap servo is working, the elevator is working, and the rudder's working. So there's that. Now, what I'd like to do is just go through a couple of little pictures to show you a little bit about how this whole thing comes together. So first off, this is the wiring diagram for the board. Okay, and by the way, the board is a Matek Crossfire to PWM-6. It's a 6-channel device, and I did confirm I am running 6 channels, so definitely a 6-channel device. And so what will happen is if you look at that diagram right up there, I highlighted in pink the row of connectors that marry up to the pins on the Crossfire. So I'm going to move the antenna out of the way. The antenna lines up with ground on the pins on the Crossfire. So if you look at this on the top of the Crossfire right here, there's a black ground wire that goes to the ground wire on the top row of the highlighted pins there up in pink. And then from there, it's 4 volt and then RX and TX. So that's how it lines up on the board. And all you do is, instead of soldering wires in, you solder in pins. And we'll get to that in just a second. I'll show you what that looks like. But it's basically like a motherboard. It's like a motherboard for the receiver. The receiver would be a daughter card, and the Matek board would be like the converter or the motherboard. All right, so that's the first thing you want to understand, is what the pins are for this arrangement. And there they are right there. Hopefully you guys can see all that and get an idea and understanding of how this, I know it's not focusing very well, but that's how the Crossfire receiver connects to the converter. Okay, so we'll get that out of the way, and we'll bring the next picture up. In this diagram, you can see how there's 2 connections, really interesting. I'm going to show you stuff on the radio, but the connections on this are real simple. Traditional ESC and ESC setup. So notice that the way they have this, if you want to have your own BEC, is you have signal on the top on pin 3, your BEC power on the middle pin, and ground on the bottom. And you can also change to an external BEC, and you have some different voltage options. I just use the standard 5 volt input on mine for testing. And then the other thing I want to draw your attention to, over on the top right of this diagram, are the VBAT and ground pins. And the cool thing about that is this is voltage for your battery pack. So you can take your leads off your mains, run them into this motherboard, and you deliver actual battery voltage via telemetry back to your radio, which is cool. And if you guys have ever done like the FreeSky FLSSS, whatever that, you know, that simple sensor is, that thing's like 10 or 12 bucks. So there's a little bit of an upgrade there. And this comes baked into the board. So, and the board, by the way, is only like $6.99. I got mine at Race Day Quads. I forgot to put a link in the description. I will put one in there for you guys so you can go get one at Race Day Quads if you want. I will put that in after the video's over. Okay, so that's the second part. Real simple wiring diagram, right? Everything so far should be pretty straightforward. ESC connects to signal, hot and ground on the motherboard, you know, the converter, and then on the board you get the VBAT ground and sorry, the VBAT positive and ground. The one thing I do have to point out, this diagram's a little bit different than the board that I got. My board only has one row. It's a little bit different. My ground is actually all the way on the other side, but it doesn't matter. It's common ground, so any ground will do. Okay, that's the second diagram. I want to show you the third one now. The third one, this is what it looks like after you solder the board to the receiver to the motherboard. Okay, that's what it looks like. I just used a straight row of DuPont pins that came in the package. I broke 4 of them off, and I simply soldered it on both sides. And the top is the Crossfire Nano, and the bottom is the motherboard. It's the converter. And then the last picture I have for you guys real quick, that's what it looks like when you're done. You do have to solder the white, red, and black pins in. So in this picture, you can see the motherboard down there at the bottom. That's the Crossfire to PWM board. You can see that down on the bottom. That's the blue one. The Crossfire Nano is soldered on top, and that's that picture I showed just a minute ago. That's that one. So that's the board that's on top, and then you solder in a row of signal pins, white on top, red in the middle, black on the bottom, and that's it. Perfectly arranged setup, very easy to do. Probably took me maybe 15 to 20 minutes to get this thing set up. So that's that on the pictures. Now I want to show you guys real quick the configuration. So the model configuration is just like you'd expect. You've got the external RF, and let me zoom in. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. I don't think we need to look at the plane anymore. Hopefully you guys are okay without the plane. I'm just going to slide that off to the side a little bit. We're going to be focusing on the receiver now and the radio. So needed to get a pointer. I don't know why I start these videos without pointers. Okay, so there's the Crossfire module configuration right there. Standard Crossfire binding. There's nothing special about it. You need that solid green light, and when you have that, you'll get the you'll get the output the way you're supposed to get it. So a couple of things I want to run through on the radio. Then I'm going to strip the whole thing apart and give you a close-up look at the device, and then we'll wrap the video up. Okay, first thing, notice the RX bat. So it is fluctuating a little bit, and I'm not sure why. I'm giving it a constant 11 volts, and it's coming. I know I can adjust the high end to calibrate it. I know that, but I'm not sure why it's bouncing. So I'm not a big fan of that. I'm not sure if maybe the Edge guys will watch this, or maybe even someone from TBS will watch this and maybe explain what's going on there. But when I look at the telemetry for the battery, I do see it jumping around. There's the actual telemetry value, and it is jumping around for the battery. So there is a way to calibrate that. You can go in and calibrate it by putting in an offset. So right now I'm running 11.1 volts. You simply bring up this offset a little bit so that you peak out at your high end. So I'm running 11.1. So I'd say that's probably pretty good right there. So a little bit of an offset to get that sensor reading a little closer to what I'm actually feeding it, but I do not know why it's bouncing like that. I'm not sure about that. But anyway, I wanted to point that out. The next thing I wanted to point out is telemetry for transmission power. So on Crossfire, you do have the option to change it. I'm going to show you that in just a moment, but remember that number, it's on T-Power 25. And then the last one is link quality. That's the total link quality. So 100 on link quality. And there are some other options. You get all the standard Crossfire telemetry. So whatever measure you prefer to use, it's all there. You get all of them. In fact, let's take a look real quick just so you can see. You've got 1 RSS, 2 RSS, RQLY, signal to noise, RF mode, transmission power, TRSS, T quality, and total signal to noise ratio at 79. So you get all of the standard Crossfire stuff. And one other thing I wanted to show you real fast, and then we'll take it apart, is the agent light, because I want to show you, remember that T-Power was set at 25. So if we go into radio settings And I'm going to set the max power up to, we'll just set it up to 250. And I'll leave dynamic power off because that will force the increase in power. So I'll leave that off, and then we'll back out, and you should see, we should see right there, T-Power 250. So you get your transmission power telemetry as well, which is really cool. I also understand they have GPS, and I'm not sure why, because I think the only thing you would get out of GPS would be telemetry coordinates, and that's it. Because unless you have GPS interacting with some form of flight computer, there's no, the GPS isn't going to fly the thing home just because you have one. So what you may see a diagram out there with GPS and go, well, hey, John, why didn't you cover that? And it's because without a flight computer, I guess maybe you get GPS coordinates via telemetry, and that'd be interesting, maybe novel, but I don't know how useful that would be to me. So that's why I didn't bother with it. So anyway, that's the setup. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to shut this down. We're going to disconnect the radio, and I'd like to show you guys. I'm going to shut everything down here on the bench and take everything off power real quick. And then I just want to break it down so you guys can get a look at it. There we go. By the way, the battery leads up here were simulating my main battery. So I'll show you those connections in just a moment. And then the power supply here on the side was simulating the ESC. So, I wanted to prove a point that you can have 5 volts coming in on the ESC line, and you can have 11 volts coming in from the battery, and it's okay. I was a little nervous about that because voltage differential, and I never tried it, so I wanted to make sure, but it does work, and that's correct. That is VBAT. All right, so let's just disconnect everything, and we'll take a look at the wiring, and then I'll take whatever questions you guys have. So if you have questions, pop them in there. I'll answer the best I can, and then we'll shut this one down. So, come on, there we go. Okay. So remember on the wiring, I told you mine was slightly different. I do not have a ground next to VBAT. Right here, I do not have ground. It says current. It says CUR. I'll have to do a little digging because that was not in my manual. So I have to do a little digging. Also notice you get a TX2 and an RX2. That's where you could connect your GPS if you want. And there's a 4-volt rail right there. So you can use the 4-volt to power your GPS, and then of course the ground. On the other side, again, these are the pins that you have to solder in. These are the, the PWM or servo pins, ground, hot, and signal. And then there is the original Crossfire. I haven't really figured out how to shrink wrap this yet. I think what I would probably do is I'd probably put a shrink wrap on the bottom and then a shrink wrap over the whole thing, just because I wouldn't want any pressure to push down on that board and cause something to connect there. So what I would do is probably put one right around the main board there to keep these separated, and then I'd probably do one around the whole thing. So that's it. That is a Crossfire PWM receiver, 6-channel, and as far as I can tell, they're fully proportional. I used the 8-channel setup on my on Agent Light, so channels 1 through 8, and the telemetry popped in instantaneously, no issues, just like you'd expect. And there you go. You got a receiver in your hands. You're $29 for the Crossfire, and you're another $6 or $7 for the motherboard, the Matek Crossfire to PWM converter. So you're about $36 in all in, and you've got a receiver that is well known to do 15 miles with all the telemetry you want, including battery voltage via telemetry, which is, I think, spectacular. And for those of you who get concerned about things like control authority and range, Crossfire, man, all I can say is it's got a great reputation out there, and I have yet to have a failure on Crossfire, and I've been using it for a couple years now. All right, let me go through the questions real quick, and then we'll shut this one down. I'm going to start up at the top. I'm just going to say hello to all you guys. Thanks for joining me. Hobie says, I use the 4-channel adapter board. I've yet to try the 6-channel. Yep, so there's another one out there. Dry Edger says, I have Crossfire PWMC. That's the other one. There's a purple one. I saw that, the Crossfire C in the mail right now. 10-channel is probably more than I'll need. Yeah, that'd be cool for like a warbird if you had, dual flaps, or maybe a sailplane, a glider, if you wanted to do, crow and stuff like that. That'd be cool. Robert says 850 up in Canada. He ordered 2 of them. Not very nice. Perfectly manicured nails. Thank you, Hobie. I try. Yeah, try. I've seen a lot of videos where guys have, you know, like the scoop nail. I don't like that. I try and keep them trimmed up. Let's say you should be a hand model, maybe another YouTube channel. Hand model YouTube channel. No Precious. No, I didn't. I had the reason I didn't is because I had the Crossfire in the church radio. So that's where I keep the Crossfire module. I didn't feel like messing around with it. So no Precious tonight. Robert says, shut it, Hobie. We had Precious out earlier, so I'm giving Robert a little break. I'm going to let him choke his dinner down and keep it down. That's all. Dry Edger says the 10-channel version has 2 UARTs, so the GPS telemetry will help me find my flyaways, lol. Yeah, that would be a reason. And you can log this stuff, too. Don't forget that. You can log telemetry. So if you get telemetry, you can log it, and that would be a use for the GPS data in case you did have a flyaway. Did I label the servo leads? No, man, I was in between. Robert's busting my chops because in the earlier video, I was struggling to find the leads. No, I didn't label them yet. I need to get a white pen and write on the black casing right here what these are, because when I'm doing these videos, they get wadded up, you know, while I'm messing with things. All right, let's see. Hobie says nope. Izalco says nice. What's the maximum current? That's a good question. You have to check the spec sheet. I did not look. I did not look. So I don't want to hazard a guess. I did not look this maximum current up. I would expect, because the motherboard, the input comes in on the motherboard 5-volt rail, that I think the current would be probably limited to your ESC, probably, because all of that voltage, it appears to power the Crossfire, but it doesn't go any further. So I'm sure the current draw would be sufficient for whatever standard ESC you'd use. I'm sure of that. But if you really want to know, I would suggest going to Matek and taking a look. Spin Launch Glide says, any advantage of the Matek versus the TBS? No, I don't think so. I don't know. I don't think so. Maybe price. I am aware of the TBS adapter, but I didn't check the price on that. All I can tell you is the Matek board is $699 maybe, and they're available everywhere. You know, everyone has them. TBS stuff, you know how it can be. Sometimes it's hard to get. It's just another option, but yeah, just another converter board. Let's see. Spin Launch says, also with Yapu maps, I think you can overlay GPS on. Yeah, you can. A lot of the telemetry tools do allow you to overlay. So yeah, that's very good. Yeah, I really haven't had any success with Yapu yet, and I think I'm not sure if it's working on Edge yet or not. I know that the iNav telemetry tool that I had was not working last time I tried it on Edge either, which is unfortunate because I do like that tool. But Beta FPV has an ELRS PWM. Yeah, but you know, with the problem with ELRS is you're still going to be limited to that. I believe you're going to be limited to the proportional channels thing, although I shouldn't say that because I haven't done my homework. So maybe not. All right, thanks for the stream. You're welcome. Hope you enjoyed it. All right, guys, that's it. I just wanted to show you guys that Crossfire PWM works. And by the way, let me close with this thought, okay? You guys know Crossfire obviously does Crossfire. I mean, they're the originators of that one. Now you've got the ability to do PWM, and I happen to know for a fact, in fact, the other one that I have here, this one, you notice how this was set up, right? This was wired in a device. And you notice there's only 3 wires there. So you know what that means. This one was set up to do S-Bus. So these little receivers, right now with the converter board, you've got Crossfire, S-Bus, and PWM now with an adapter board. That's pretty compelling. The only thing we're missing, to my knowledge, is telemetry for Icon flight controllers or Brain flight controllers or the Spirit flight controllers. And I think Spirit just enabled telemetry over Crossfire as well. So what that means to me is we're now talking about a full circle solution that can fly quads, which is obvious, now fixed wing, and also helicopters as soon as they get, for me, it's Icon because that's what I use on my helicopters. But as soon as they get that telemetry for Icon working over Crossfire, that's it, man. This is the full Monty. It's got everything, and you never have to worry about range. Now, I know some of you guys are racers, and you'll say, but 2.4 and higher, yeah, whatever. I'm not a racer, so to me, that doesn't matter. I can tell you I've never sat and flown anything with Crossfire and said, boy, I wish it were more responsive. You know, it's just not an issue I've had. So that's it. Yeah, S-Bus to Copilot, Hobie. That's right. And that's pretty much what I did with this. In fact, that's what I do with most of my Copilots. I run a TBS Crossfire, and I run S-Bus to the Copilot. That's exactly it. All right, guys, that's all I've got. I appreciate you hanging out with me on, what is it, Wednesday night? And two for, man. We got two good little receiver videos in tonight. So good stuff. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thanks for joining me. That's all I've got for today. Take it easy.